Good evening, and welcome to Last Week Was a Mistake, the show where we try to make sense of the week's news and inevitably regret it. And boy, do we regret this last week. I'm your host, Nicole, and just like Canada's economy, I too have been struggling with dumb government officials. This week, we've got political chaos, economic whiplash, secret spy meetings, Bigfoot, and a guy in Saskatchewan planting GPS trackers on strangers' cars. Oh, and in international news, France considered sending troops to Greenland because Trump still thinks he can just take it. Because nothing says stable leadership like, "Hi, friend and ally, I would like to invade your frozen landmass, please." Stay tuned for these stories and more. In our first story tonight, Pierre Poilievre turned down a classified CSIS briefing on foreign interference this week because, and I quote, "it would prevent him from talking about it in public." Right, because actually knowing classified intel is way less useful than just making things up. So let's get this straight. CSIS, the actual Canadian intelligence agency, was like, "Hey, Pierre, we'll tell you which MPs might be compromised by foreign governments, but you can't just go blabbing about it on Twitter." And Poilievre was like, "Nah, I'd rather keep guessing and yelling about it." Which, to be fair, is basically his entire political strategy. Step 1, don't look at facts. Step 2, say whatever will make people angry. And step 3, profit from it. But it gets better. Poilievre also refuses to get a top secret security clearance because it would limit what he can publicly say about national security. Ah, yes, the old "I refuse to learn anything so I can confidently continue saying dumb things" strategy. Classic. Imagine applying this logic to other jobs. "I refuse to go to medical school because then I won't be able to give my totally unverified opinions on open heart surgery." Or, "No thanks, I don't want flight data. I'd rather just wave my arms around and hope the planes figure it out." Honestly, it's kind of impressive. The man has reached quantum levels of ignorance. The less he knows, the stronger he becomes. And somehow, this is the guy who wants to run the country. And polls still show him ahead with Canadians. What the fuck, Canada? Speaking of liberal failures, the liberal leadership race continues. And if it seems like nobody is really excited about it, it's because nobody's really excited about it. This week, Jamie Battiste, the only Indigenous candidate in the race, dropped out and endorsed Mark Carney, a former banker with big "dad who's mad that brunch cost him $50" vibes. So now we're down to just 5 candidates. Mark Carney, former Bank of Canada governor, running on "I'm boring but competent," which in all fairness is a total upgrade. Chrystia Freeland, former deputy prime minister, who bailed on Trudeau like a rat fleeing a sinking ship if the ship was captained by a former drama teacher who kept forgetting his lines and insisting the iceberg was just a teachable moment. Karina Gould, friendly, competent, but let's be real, you just Googled her. Ruby Dahala, the underdog, hoping name recognition from 2008 is still a thing. Frank Baylis, the political equivalent of insert name here. So, coming this spring, 5 liberals enter, 1 leaves, because let's be honest, no one else wants that job. Meanwhile, Trudeau is still technically prime minister until March, which means we're all in that awkward phase where the breakup's already happened, but he's still crashing on the couch. And in true Trudeau fashion, he's still doing his best to make things as uncomfortable as possible. See, he's just kind of lingering in the political background like a dude who refuses to leave the party, even though the lights are on and people are stacking chairs. March can't come soon enough. And in a move that surprised absolutely no one except for Pierre Poilievre, Mark Carney announced that he would scrap the federal carbon tax. And Poilievre had a full-on identity crisis over it. "But that was my thing. Carbon tax bad. Also, I already blew the budget on Axe the Tax ads and signage. What am I supposed to pretend I care about now?" It's like he spent years building a political brand around no more carbon tax, and then Carney just walked in and pulled a reverse Uno card on him. So, instead of a tax, Carney wants a green incentive program where people get rewards for making eco-friendly choices. So basically like air miles, but for recycling. which in theory is fine, but how do you reward people for just not doing something? Like, do I get a gift card every time I don't buy a coal-powered jet ski? Introducing the government's new eco-point system. Drive an electric car, get a free Tim's gift card. Take the bus, we'll mail you a hug. Installed solar panels? Congratulations, you've unlocked platinum status. Enjoy your free tote bag. Look, we all love free stuff, but this feels like when your credit card company tries to convince you that 2% cash back on gas is going to change your life. Meanwhile, Poilievre is scrambling to rebrand because without Axe the Tax, what does he even do? Okay, guys, maybe I just yell fire Trudeau even louder. The man is absolutely flailing, and honestly, it's hilarious to watch. Also, it turns out economically we're broke, but in a fancy way. The capital gains tax increase has been delayed until 2026, which is government speak for we'll make this someone else's problem after the election. Rich people were absolutely losing their minds over this tax until they realized the delay means now they have another year to legally dodge it. Meanwhile, the government's in a weird tax limbo where they had already started collecting the tax, but hadn't actually passed the law for it yet. So now the CRA is standing around like an awkward waiter who just realized they brought you the wrong bill. Great news, you might get your money back, or we'll just keep it. We haven't decided yet, but have a great day. At this point, Canada's tax system feels less like an organized financial institution and more like a glitchy Monopoly game where no one remembers the rules. Also, it turns out we're in a recession. But the Bank of Canada just cut interest rates by 25 basis points to 3%, which is their way of saying, yeah, things are bad, but let's pretend we're fine so people keep spending money. It's like when your bank balance is dangerously low, but instead of dealing with it, you just keep tapping your card and hoping for the best. And just to make things even more fun, the Bank of Canada is now warning that a potential trade war with the US could be very damaging to the economy. Oh, and guess what? That war kicks off Tuesday. But depending on when you're watching this, it might have already started. Or maybe it hasn't, because let's be real, Trump could change his mind for the 10th time by breakfast Tuesday. So, our economy is in serious danger, but don't panic. Instead, buy more stuff. And please don't ask how much debt we're in. In summary, the government is charging people a tax they haven't fully approved yet. The Bank of Canada is cutting rates while also warning we might spiral into a trade war, and everyone's just expected to keep spending money like nothing's happening. It's like if your house was on fire, but instead of putting it out, the fire department handed you a shopping list and said, go buy some candles. Everything's perfectly fine. Meanwhile, over in Saskatchewan, in a crime that's both creepy and wildly unnecessary, a 46-year-old man in Saskatoon was caught planting GPS trackers on random cars because apparently just minding his own business wasn't an option. Police say at least 10 trackers are still unaccounted for, which raises the questions, who needs this much surveillance power in Saskatoon? Like, what is he tracking? Who is he following? Saskatoon has 3 main destinations: your house, Tim Hortons, and that one bar that's only good on Saturdays. Sir, you don't need to track people in Saskatoon. If they're not at work, they're at the drive-thru or complaining about potholes. Just ask around. Honestly, if this guy wanted to know where people in Saskatoon are going, he could have just joined the town Facebook group instead of pulling a low-budget James Bond stunt. Here's a fun news story for us, though. A Bigfoot hunt ends in divorce. In possibly the most Canadian divorce story ever, a man lost his marriage after his wife discovered he took his ex-girlfriend on a Bigfoot hunting trip. Adultery is bad enough, but adultery during a Sasquatch expedition? And in the ultimate plot twist, after days of tracking footprints, analyzing blurry photos, and whispering in the woods like they were in a bad Blair Witch reboot, it turned out to be a moose. Not Bigfoot, just a very large, very confused moose that now has trust issues because 2 weird humans in Cameo spent a weekend sneaking around in the forest trying to recruit it as evidence for their conspiracy theory. So, marriage? Over. Bigfoot? Still not real. Moose wants to be left alone. Canada, you never fail to disappoint. In not-so-breaking news, Trump is still a clown. Trump spent the week signing executive orders that made everyone wonder if we're living in some kind of glitching simulation. First, he made the government more white and unvaccinated by gutting DEI programs and reinstating service members who were discharged for refusing COVID vaccines. Because sure, nothing says military readiness like bringing back a bunch of guys who lost their jobs over Facebook conspiracy theories. Then, in a move that feels like it was pulled from a rejected Call of Duty script, he signed an executive order directing undocumented immigrants to be detained at Guantanamo Bay. That's right, Gitmo's expanding, and now, instead of suspected terrorists, it's holding asylum seekers and other undocumented immigrants. Somewhere out there, Dick Cheney is grinning like the Grinch. But wait, there's somehow more. Last week, Trump also hit the pause button on federal funding across the board, creating mass confusion for everything from social programs to state projects. But then he rescinded that order, then rescinded the order that rescinded the order, then rescinded that order again. I don't know where all that is at right now, so if you're in America and rely on social programs, good luck with all that. In a move that has left economists and allies scratching their heads, President Trump announced that effective Tuesday, the U.S. will be moving ahead with 25% tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico and a 10% tariff on goods from China. The stated reason? To combat illegal immigration and the influx of fentanyl into the U.S. But when pressed on whether Canada or Mexico could negotiate their way out of these tariffs, Trump confirmed that there was not. Which checks out because Canada has since beefed up border security with helicopters, enhanced real-time surveillance, deployed 60 new drones, and have made arrangements to purchase new technologies, including X-rays, mobile X-rays, and handheld chemical analyzers. And they're establishing a joint intelligence group which will expand the RCMP security collection capacity, enabling them to target transnational organized crime and fentanyl trafficking more effectively. So wait, wasn't this supposed to be about drugs? If these tariffs are really about border security, why hasn't Trump seen that Canada did literally exactly what he asked? Our Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, implemented 25% tariffs on $155 billion worth of U.S. goods last night, while both Ontario and Nova Scotia announced complete bans on U.S. alcohol this morning. Meanwhile, Mexican officials are rallying with business leaders to strategize against the economic impact. So, to recap, Trump is imposing hefty tariffs on one of his closest allies under the guise of combating drugs and illegal immigration, all while ignoring the potential economic fallout. It's like trying to fix a leaky faucet by setting the house on fire. And in yet another display of peak Trump logic, the president blamed a tragic military helicopter crash on DEI, because apparently everything bad that happens now is the fault of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This time he set his sights on air traffic controllers, strongly implying that the crash wouldn't have happened if the FAA wasn't busy hiring unqualified people to meet diversity quotas. Now, he stopped short of actually explaining how DEI caused the accident, because of course he did. But if you follow his logic, and we don't recommend that for sanity reasons, it would go something like this. See, if air traffic controllers weren't so woke, maybe they'd focus on doing their jobs instead of using pronouns. Meanwhile, the White House, realizing they had to clean up yet another mess, quietly admitted it was actually an issue of altitude. So no, DEI didn't cause the crash. Gravity did. Anyway, also because he can't resist taking a flamethrower to public education, he also dropped new policies targeting so-called woke indoctrination in schools. Federal funding for public schools that teach systemic racism or gender identity? Gone. More money for private religious schools that teach dinosaurs were on Noah's Ark? Absolutely. And if all that wasn't dystopian enough, Trump is still out here thirsting for Greenland. France is now so unnerved by his Arctic obsession that they're offering to send troops there. Yep, we are now officially in a Greenland military standoff in 2025. This timeline sure sucks balls. But finally, some good news. Tigers win. For once, a news story that doesn't make you want to set your phone on fire. India just doubled its tiger population in 10 years, which is absolutely incredible. Except now there are so many tigers that people are casually running into them like they're discounted AirPods on Black Friday. This is a huge win for conservation, though, a rare W for the planet, and a nice reminder that humanity can actually accomplish things, at least when it involves making apex predators with zero natural enemies. Now, if we could just put the same level of effort into fighting climate change, we might actually have a planet left for all these tigers to roam on. So, to recap our top stories, Poilievre refuses to learn secrets because that would ruin conspiracy theories. The Liberals are in a Hunger Games battle for leadership. Carney stole Poilievre's no carbon tax gimmick. The economy is on fire, but we're all pretending it's fine. Trump still thinks he can invade Greenland. Saskatchewan has an actual Bond villain. Bigfoot hunting is bad for marriage. And thank God tigers are thriving. Well, that's it for Last Week Was a Mistake. Stay sane, stay skeptical, and of course, like and subscribe. I'll see you all next week.